Good evening. I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. The Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall in Council Chambers. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Atkinson.
Here.
Mr. Balfons.
Here.
Ms. Bondo. Ms. Figdor. Ms. Davis.
Here.
Ms. Morioni. Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow.
Here.
Mr. Inabanza. Mr. Norris.
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski. Mr. Samuntu. And Mr. Abdirahman. And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. And real quick, Ms. Bondo and Ms. Morioni did tell me that they were not going to be able to make it. They're both out of town, so we won't expect them tonight. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to start tonight with the report of the students. Today we have a Portland High School report from Mr. Norris. Go ahead, sir. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like only weeks ago that we had the honor of sending our seniors off to their various post-secondary plans, but it's been a bittersweet end of the summer, and now in a couple weeks we'll have the new honor of welcoming a bunch of new students, both those who have spent most of their lives in the Portland education system, and especially extending our welcomes to those who this might be their first year at a Portland school, just new arrivals. Also, in conjunction with that, we're going to be excited to welcome many new teachers to join that class, and a new assistant principal. Well, the hallways are still pretty clear at Portland High School, at least for the next week or so, 2 weeks, until September 3rd when school starts, but there are still lots of happenings going about to get things ready to go. Most of our fall sports are in preseason, including the soccer team, track, many other fall sports, and I think if you walk across the street right now, you'd see the girls volleyball team practicing. And also, I think, myself included, many other students are getting their supplies ready, getting their summer reading done, and the end of the summer crunch. I can say that mine is definitely a work in progress at the moment, but I think everybody's gearing up, and I think it's going to be another great year at Portland High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. I think a lot of us are feeling the pre-start of the school year kind of pressure and anxiety. So from a parent and from a student, we can probably relate. So next we are up for the report of the superintendent. Mr. Botana, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to begin my comments today by recognizing the Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland, the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand. And as always, we're honored to have their children learning side by side with all of our students in our schools today. I would like to begin our honors with honoring the staff from our Intake and Enrollment Center. As many of you know, the City of Portland received an influx of asylum seekers on the last week of the past school year. I've been so proud to live and work in this community as it has rallied to welcome and help our newest neighbors transition into the community. Shortly after the asylum seekers arrived, Grace Valenzuela, our Executive Director for Communications and Community Partnerships, took the helm to serve as the school district's point person in our efforts. Over the summer, under Grace's leadership, working alongside the district's summer school team led by Gail Cressy, the district has provided summer school to nearly all of the more than 80 students that spent their summer at the Expo. But the first step in that effort was to complete their intake. Our multilingual intake process is a thorough evaluation of a student's past academic, social, emotional, and medical history, and an assessment of their current academic levels and English proficiency. Since the arrival coincided with the end of the school year and the intake center's break, we were forced to ask our intake staff to extend their hours and change their break plans. I think I don't really need to tell those of you who know these folks that they stepped up to the plate without hesitation. One of the things that's been most impressive about the equity work in the Portland Public Schools is the investment that we make in our community outreach. It is unique in Maine and rivals what you would expect to find in the most diverse and welcoming school districts anywhere in the country. But what sets it apart from even those organizations is the quality, selflessness, and passion of the folks who do that work. Starting with Grace, it extends to every single one of the folks here today and those who couldn't be with us. A couple weekends ago, I spoke to the ELL coordinator in Brunswick, where many of the new arrival families are finding housing. I had called her to tell her about the preliminary steps that we had taken to ensure that our students had an introduction to American schools with their summer school experience, but above all, to provide the detailed and thorough understanding of them that we achieved through the work of the Intake Center. She was extremely relieved and grateful for not having to attempt to duplicate those efforts in her district. We've shared that same information with superintendents across the state, and as students are settling, people are calling us to get that information. So I would like to recognize Monique Mutumwinka, who's not with us today, Bertley Despacho, Josephine Bizimana, who's also not with us, Jen Turkowitz, Emily Hall-Greeley, Jennifer Dorval, and Maureen Clancy. So could you please step up to the mic?
Very much. Thanks so much.
Your dedication and commitment to your work is humbling. Your expertise and empathy are part of what makes the Portland Public Schools a unique and special institution. So thank you again for all that you do every day, but especially for what you've done this summer. I'd also like to thank the following summer program staff who rallied to expand summer learning opportunities to support the school-aged children being housed at the Expo. With us today is Gail Cressy, our intervention director, and I also want to recognize Molly Myers, the district summer programs coordinator, Carol Ridlin, who was the coordinator of summer in the city, and then a long list of other staff that were instrumental in what we were able to do this summer. And so they're not here today. We will recognize them at a future date, but they are Marcy Ann Bushner, Carolyn Clavel, Anna DeCastro, Gwen Gilman, Jack Coney, Katrin Monahan, Fernando Olimpio, Bakita Sabino, Dorothy Thompson. All of them were Summer in the City staff. Lori Babinski and Renee Serial were the Reiki Summer Program coordinators. Fatuma Ali, Jennifer Seed, Christine Worth were the Reiki Rising Kindergarten staff. Carlos Gomez was our Middle School and High School Language Academy coordinator. Bridget Belanda, Margaret Callahan, Pamela Otunu, Joel Peck, Jessica Sturgis, Rachel Watson, and Emily Wilson were Middle School and High School Language Academy staff. And of course, Barb Stoddard, our Executive Director of HR, and the Teach Portland interns who adjusted their placements to match the language needs in the newly added classrooms. So let's thank all of those folks. So I would like to transition now to talking about my goals for the year. Every year, the board evaluates my performance using a set of criteria that are based on superintendent competencies as reflected in policy CBI. This past year, the board's Finance and Personnel Committee spent a significant amount of time reviewing different performance rubrics and settled on one based on the Interstate School Leaders Licensure Consortium Standards, ISLIC. Additionally, as I enter my second contract, we've added annual specific goals that have been developed jointly with the board, and these goals are intended to represent key work that I'm accountable to the board and community for performing, in addition to the evaluation on the broader standards-based performance in the annual evaluation tool. At your desks today are the 5 goals that we've mutually agreed would be the centerpiece of my work this year. And as you know, I've started to put together specific performance measures and will continue to work with the board chair and the Finance Personnel Committee to formalize these performance measures. They're supposed to be up on the screen, but I think I was supposed to do something. Mustafa, could you do me a quick favor and go and plug in the computer and open up those goals so that the public can see them as well? I know that the board has them at their desk. So the goals are, first, execution of the FY20 budget priorities. So that's specifically our pre-kindergarten expansion, Breathe, and our content area leadership activities. Number 2 is execution on the BFOF Lyseth project, as well as the startup of the next 3 school projects. My third goal is to increase our staff collective efficacy. That is something that the board is very familiar with, and staff have heard us talk about the importance of collective efficacy, which we really define as people feeling that they are part of an organization that is focused on a goal that is shared by everyone in that organization, and that they have the support to be able to advance that work. Number 4 is to work collaboratively with the board and with other stakeholders to create a budget for FY21 that advances the district's ability to meet the Portland Promise goals and achieve fiscal stability and sustainability. And last but not least, it's to work with the board collaboratively as well as with other stakeholders in a review of the high school selection process. I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done together for the past 3 years and feel very accountable for the progress of the district. I believe that these goals represent key deliverables that will advance quality education in Portland. And later in the meeting, I will be talking about our progress on the Portland Promise goals. And as you will see then, while there are promising signs in some areas, there's also evidence that there's significant amount of work that remains to be done. So I welcome the opportunity to work with you, with the staff, and stakeholders in the community to realize these goals and to continue to move the district forward. We're 2 weeks out. Today will be 2 weeks from today that we start the school year. And I know that my young friends in the first couple of rows there are probably not as excited about it as I am, but I am extremely excited about the start of my 4th school year here in the Portland Public Schools, and so I very much look forward to 2 weeks from today. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think the board is excited for your 4th year as well, and we look forward to it and seeing these goals carried out. Next, the report of Secretary, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of August 6, 2019. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, second by Ms. Figdor. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of August 6, 2019, please indicate. Anybody abstaining? Okay. So we have 5 in favor, 2 people abstaining. Thank you. Next, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of June 18th, 2019. Is there a motion? Mr. Atkinson, second. Mr. Balfans, thank you. Is there any questions on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment on the motion? None. Any board discussion? None. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of June 18, 2019, please indicate. And Ms. Figueroa abstaining. So 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor. Ms. Figueroa abstaining. I wanted to, Superintendent, can we clarify it's not food from last time? I'm going to try to clarify. Last meeting, when we tried to approve the minutes, we ended up postponing it till tonight because we only had 4 votes in the affirmative, and we interpreted that as not having a quorum. It was clarified since then that because we did have a quorum present in the board, that it would have passed with the 4 votes, and it would have just been a majority of the quorum that was present, and even though the other votes were abstaining. So in the future, when we encounter that, which is not very common, I think now we know how to carry it forward. Postponing it till today obviously was not a big deal, and I'm glad that it worked out and that we got clarification on it. All right, having said that, we'll move on to report of the committees. We'll start with Curriculum and Ed Planning Committee. Mr. Balfans, if you're ready.
Yes, nothing new to report except that our next curriculum committee meeting will be Tuesday, September 17th at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Balfans. Operations Committee, Ms. Thompson.
I'm going to defer to the superintendent. I was absent in the last meeting.
So the Operations Committee met once in early August. I think it was on August 1st, as a matter of fact. And the only issue on the Operations Committee agenda was the solar projects. And so at the time, we had advocates from Solarize and community partners that came, and we reviewed the CES report, which the board heard at the last meeting in workshop, and which is the foundation for the resolution that you are being asked to vote on later today. So that was the only item on the agenda, and that's all that Operations has done at this point.
Thank you, Superintendent. Finance and Personnel Committee, Ms. Trevor.
Thank you, Chair. The Finance Committee is meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock at Central Office, and the agenda is going to be around projections for state funding. We have a couple of guests that are going to be joining us from the legislative delegation, Representative Dick Farnsworth, who's on the Education Committee, and Representative Eric Jorgensen, who's on the Appropriations Committee. We also invited Representative Brennan, but he unfortunately wasn't able to make it. But they're going to be able to give us an update of what remains on the table in terms of bills that were carried over from last year that'll be coming up this year in the legislature that we should be kind of keeping an eye on and may affect our budget, as well as just a general picture of what state funding looks like for next year. So we're looking forward to that, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Trevor. Excuse me. Policy, Legislative, and excuse me. This is still together here. Policy and Legislative Committee, Ms. Davis.
Yes, we'll be meeting tomorrow evening at 7:30 after the Finance Committee, and our agenda involves an update on policy KFD, which is particularly concerns a request from Peaks Island about access to the schools. We're also going to look at policy JLCD, which is administering medication to students and smoking and tobacco products. And then we're going to take a look at policy book B revisions and look at some of the policies where what's probably recommended are mostly updates. In many cases, it's changing school committee to school board or other kinds of small, generally alignment kinds of things. So we'll be reviewing those. And our next meeting after that is September 12th at 7:30, which is different than what's listed on the agenda for that committee, but we have moved that. It will, again, sort of line up with the Finance Committee. There's a fair amount of overlap in the people on those two committees, and so it works well for us to meet on the same evening.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davis. And last, Public Affairs Committee, Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you. We actually had to reschedule our meeting that was scheduled for last week, so we're still working on rescheduling that, but we're going to be talking about the Portland Promise community outreach around the Portland Promise, and coming up with a schedule proposal for coffee with constituents and with students events. And so board members should check their inbox in the next week or two for a whole bunch of dates for those events.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. We have Appointments Committee. Ms. Morian is not here. No one else would have to report tonight. And then other committees and our member concerns. Ms. Thompson?
I just want to mention that the District Advisory Building Committee and the Building Level Advisory Committee for Lyseth School met on Thursday, August 15th at Lyman Moore Middle School, and we received updates from Harriman Associates, the architects, as well as from staff. They were awarded, Harriman was awarded the contract is being negotiated currently for the final 3 schools. We also discussed the timeline. We're currently on schedule. Everything's looking good. And we also discussed the fact of whether we would have one large building level advisory committee with the 3, or if we would do separate building levels per our resolution that was passed, or the governance structure. And overwhelmingly, or actually unanimously of all those present, want to maintain the building level advisory committees for each of the schools. So that'll be something that'll be going through the appointments committee, and we just passed the policy recently, so we'll be working with Ms. Morioni on that. And the expected completion of Phase 1B, excuse me, which is some electrical work and underground work, is right about the end of this month. And then we'll be ready for the students to come back in, and we'll work around them being there. So everything's going well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Anyone else? If not, I just want to add the Family Partnership Committee is next meeting on Monday, August 26th at 8 a.m. And that'll be our first meeting since coming back from the July break. Okay, if we don't have anything else, move on to consent items. Will the superintendent please list, or rather speak to the list of items?
Yes, under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district. As required by that policy, all of the donations are listed in the board agenda under this item. And our practice is for each donor to receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude as well as for their tax purposes. I would like to thank the many generous contributors to the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods, goods of substantial value, and historical or commemorative significance. And the beneficiaries for this meeting are Ocean Avenue Elementary School received highlighters from Connie Kearney of Grantham, New Hampshire, and Lincoln Middle School received 4 new backpacks filled with supplies for students from Coralie Sherman of Peaks Island. So thank you very much to those generous supporters and contributors to the work of the Portland Public Schools.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, for the board focus on educational issues, we're going to have an update on the Portland Promise goals. I'm not sure who's going to prepare us. Perfect. I'm assuming there's an overhead. All right,
Very well. So today we wanted to do an update on the Portland Promise metrics. I obviously feel like I don't really need to remind you what the Portland Promise is, but we're going to do a little bit of that for all of the public. And this is what we hope will be an annual update at the meeting before we start the school year, where we give you an update on the progress that we've made against those key metrics in the Portland Promise. Want to recognize that we, as you know, have a new data manager, Jamie Kearney, who's here with us today, and Jamie is really helping us to get our data visualization and our data analysis up to a level where it has not been in a long time, working side by side with Mustafa Rastanpour, our Director of Data and Technology. So I want to thank both of them for their hard work in getting us to this point. I believe that this is a concise and visually understandable report that will be the basis of how we communicate about where we are as a school district in relation to our goals. So for each of the goals tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to review what the key metrics are, what the data from the last 2 to 3 years, and you'll see as we go along that in some of them we have 2 years of data, and some of them we have 3 years of data. And then just a frank and honest assessment of where there is progress or where there isn't progress towards achieving our goals, the targets that we set back in 2017 when we started this work. So the first goal, as you know, is achievement, and that means that all of our students graduate and they're prepared for college and career and empowered to pursue a productive post-secondary path. You all know that we use as our tagline as a district, prepared and empowered, and that comes specifically from this goal, that our kids will have the knowledge and skills, they'll be prepared, and they'll know what they intend to do with it, and that's the empowered portion of our prepared and empowered. When we set out on this work, we said that we would use 2 key indicators. One are the progress that our students make on the state assessment, the MEA, and then the other one is our graduation rates, both our 4-year and our 5-year graduation rates. So let's talk a little bit about the achievement, and we don't have new achievement data, so this is data that you've already seen, but we're pulling it together as part of this report. So you've seen bits and pieces of what we're going to be talking about today in multiple presentations over the course of the year, so some of this is most of this is not new. So you can see that our target here is based on the state targets, and that means that by 2022, our Portland Promise goal, when we will take stock on where we are, is that we would be in the aggregate of 60% in ELA. And you can see that our progress over the last 3 years is non-existent. So we've essentially been flat for those 3 years. You can also see the state's course, and it's very similar. So clearly that is not where we want to be, and this is an area where we feel that progress, that we need to make significant progress. The same is true for math, where, again, our progress for the past 3 years is basically static. So we have not improved at all during that period of time, and our target is to reach 51% of our students meeting or exceeding standards on the MEA by 2022. So again, we have not made progress on this goal, and it's one that, again, we need to obviously begin to make some headway. I will say that, as you know, these are some of the areas where we have made substantial investments these past couple of years. And so when I talked earlier about my goals, particularly the goals around, academic and instructional leadership, these are specifically targeted to making improvements in these areas. So we have taken steps to line up the resources and the structures that will enable us to make progress in these areas. And so I'm confident that as we move forward, that we will begin to see that progress. An area where we show better progress is in our graduation rate. So this is our 4-year graduation rate. We, as you can see in the note at the bottom, we will have the 5-year graduation rates for 2017 and 18 in the fall of 2019. So at that time, we will have an update that will include our 5-year graduation rate. But over the past 3 years, our graduation rate has climbed from 82% to 86%. And so we feel that we are making the kind of progress that we would hope to see, our goal being 92% of students graduating prepared and empowered. And right now, our trajectory, should it stay on this current course, would be approximating that goal at 90% graduation rate in 2022. Moving on to our whole student goal, this is the recognition that beyond reading, beyond math, beyond science, social studies, and all of the other content areas, that our work as a school district is also to ensure that our students develop the skills, the habits, and the mindsets that they need in order to be able to succeed in their lives, in the next step of their lives. And so the way that we said we would measure this is we administer a student survey in the spring, and we also administer a parent survey. And the student survey is designed to have students reflect on the degree to which they feel safe, that they have an adult around them who cares about them, and that they are obtaining the knowledge, the skills, the habits that allow them to relate to their peers, to adults in effective ways. So that's the student level survey, what it gets at, and our parent survey gets at the parent-reported degree to which they feel that their child is engaged in school, has positive experiences, and that they feel like they're partners with the school, and that they have positive experiences with our interactions with them, with our communication with them, the way that we relate to them and inform them of what's happening. So we first are going to look at the student survey, and so our goal is to have 95% of students report that they are that they feel safe, that they feel that there is an adult who cares about them, and that they perceive themselves as attaining the skills to be able to relate to adults and to students. So that was set using the original 2016-17 high school survey, which is different from the survey that we're now administering. So we use that as the baseline, but it is substantially, it's a substantially higher target than where we are when we started to baseline. So we expanded beyond that high school survey that was a one-question survey to a more thorough instrument that's administered all the way down to our middle school students, and so it's all the way down to our third grade students that take it. So it's a different survey for elementary students than it is to middle school students, but it still measures those same three dimensions. And frankly, I believe that it's too soon to actually say that we have a trend. We have 2 years of data, and the data is relatively flat. We no longer administer that one-question survey to our high school students. Instead, we are using data from the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, which is administered every 2 years to high school students across the state. As we talked with our leaders, they felt that that's a very thorough, rigorous survey. It measures the same dimensions as the individual student survey that we were going to administer, and we'll have it every other year, but we will aggregate those and report on the total district once we have that sometime soon in the fall of 2019. The student survey, the parent survey, again, as I mentioned, it sort of measures two different dimensions. One is the parent's experience, and then the other one is their perception of the student experience. So this is, how parents believe that their students are experiencing the school system. Again, we set the target in 2017 at 95%. That's what we aspire to. And we administered the survey for the first time in 2017-18. And on that first dimension of parent experience, 91% of our parents reported that they felt that they were welcome in school, that they felt that they were partners, and they had positive experiences with the district and school communications. That's dropped some in the last year, so it's too soon, frankly, to say that we have a trend, but it is something that we are very much paying attention to. So the same is true for parents' perception of the students' experience. So we have seen in the first year, 92% of our respondents said that they experienced that their child had somebody in school that cared for them and that the student felt that they belonged, and that has dropped in the second year. So again, not a trend, but something that we are that we need to, be cognizant of, and hopefully be able to figure out what are the things that we need to do to get to that 95% reporting.
Was there a big, I think I remember seeing or hearing that there was a difference in the turnout, or rather the participation rate on the survey this year?
No, it was both years was somewhere in the 25%. 25 and 28%, both years. Yeah. Any other questions? I forgot to mention, just stop me and ask questions, because I can just keep going on these things. So.
On the whole student goal, I just had a question about the high school, the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. You said every 2 years you're gonna have data for 2019. So is it even, or odd years is when the survey takes place?
So it was administered this past spring. So this is an odd year. So yes.
Okay. So that's when we can expect. All right. Thank you.
Okay, moving to our equity goal, I think you know what the story is going to be here as well, just based on the data that you've seen in other places. So our equity goal is, central to how we define our work as a school system. We know that we have very marked differences in outcomes for students that tend to be associated with factors such as their socioeconomic background, language background, disabilities, and things along those lines. So our goals, our goal is to be vigilant in making sure that we understand what it is that stands in the way of all of our students achieving those high standards and being unequivocal in removing the barriers that exist that are systemic barriers to that. And so you've heard us talk during budget times about the importance of the investments that we're making in things like pre-kindergarten and Breathe as part of our efforts to enable all students to achieve those high standards. So the way that we look at this is, again, there's two key indicators. One is the proficiency levels on MEA, and that's reducing the gap between subgroups in that assessment. And then the other one is increasing the proportional participation in programming. So increasing the percentage of our students who are students from disadvantaged backgrounds, students who are of different races, who participate in things such as our gifted and talented programs and advanced placement and so on. And we do not have that data at this point. That is work that is still progressing, but that we think is incredibly important and are looking forward to bringing definitely sometime in the near future. You'll see a little bit of the impact of some of those things at our next board meeting, when we will be reporting out on our year-long work with the Barr Foundation on our high school outcomes, and you'll see the impact of things like increasing the level of rigor for students in their success once they leave us. So what I'm going to focus on then today is just the gap between our economically disadvantaged students and our students who are not economically disadvantaged. And so here you see the current level of performance, the blue line being our non-economically disadvantaged students, and then the orange line being economically disadvantaged students. So again, you see that the performance levels you saw at the beginning of the presentation when I talked about the combined scores, that brings everybody together. It tracks the state, but when you look at the performance of our non-economically disadvantaged students, they perform at really high levels, and that's not true for our students who are economically disadvantaged. And I do want to point out, which I think you also know, that similar gaps like these exist for other groups of students. So whether we look at the data by race or by English language proficiency, disability, and things along those lines, these are the kinds of gaps that you see. And I think that that's why this is such an urgent drive for us as a district, is that these are the kinds of gaps that we see here are not the gaps that represent what we want to be as a community and what we want to be as a school district. So I certainly don't feel any level of satisfaction when I look at these scores and think that this is, this is our school district. So, so as you can see, those gaps remain basically what they've been since the time that I started. And so, again, I'm hopeful that the kinds of work that we're doing, the efforts that we've put in place over the last couple of years to begin to root out some of those systemic inequities will make a difference in this data, and you can see what our trajectory is to meet our 2022 target, and then the state's half the gap approach, which is the way in which the state reports to the federal government on performance at the state level. Yes, Ms. Figdor.
Clearly, we want to make significant progress in reducing the achievement gap across all of our schools, but I do believe that there are some schools where we're seeing improvements. Is that the case? And if so, can you speak to what that looks like?
I'm not prepared to do that today. I don't feel that I can do that justice. So I don't know, Malia, do you know? Yeah, so we can, yeah. What, can you say it louder?
Yeah, an example would be Riverton Elementary School has seen some significant increases, especially in GLA. There's a few other schools where we're looking at that. So, I think it would be a great follow-up conversation where we could talk about some of our theories about what the root cause of that, and certainly a conversation around these there.
As I noted, we don't have the opportunity gap data at this point, but we are working to get that, and we'll report on it when we do. And then the final goal is our people goal, and so as you know, that's the idea that everything that we do is built on the amazing people that are the part of the Portland Public Schools, and that our goal as such is to attract and support and be able to retain the most talented and diverse group of people that we can to help us achieve those goals. And we look at this through three different indicators. First, and you'll see that this is data that you saw not all that long ago when we reported on the TNTP survey. The first one is ensuring that we have employees that are engaged, and we do that by measuring their engagement on a set of questions in the TNTP survey that all of our staff takes in the spring. The second one is the Net Promoter Score, and this is, when we started the work around people, we said this was going to be the central one to look at the percentage of folks that say that they would recommend working at the Portland Public Schools to a friend or a relative. And then the last one is our ability to increase the diversity of our staff, so that we have heard time and time again that our staff does not reflect the backgrounds of our students, and so that is part of our efforts as a district to increase the diversity of our staff. And so on that first measure, I think you've seen this before, this is the Instructional Culture Index for PPS, and that increased, slightly in this past year. We're still well below the national average, and something that we need to continue to work towards is approaching that level of performance. You've also seen the Net Promoter Score, and again, this is not something that I'm 100% sure of, but the way that the Net Promoter Score works is anything above 0 is good. Something in the range of 50 is great. Is that right? Yeah. So our score was right at 0 in 2018, and it dipped slightly this past year. So we're no longer in the what would be considered good territory. And I think it's important to point out a couple of the things that we've noted in the data, and I think we've talked with you about this before, that we had overall a drop in people that considered themselves promoters that dropped to the passive. So anything in that gray band, so that would be a score of 9, 8, 7 or 6, right? A score of 7 or 6. When asked how likely are you to recommend this, if you scored it a 7 or if you scored it a 6, you would be considered a passive. And so we had a slight increase, 3% of a 3-point drop in the number of promoters, and that group moved into the passive range. Fortunately, we didn't have a change in detractors, so the people that don't like us still don't like us. But we did experience a drop in the net number of promoters. And so we will continue to monitor this. Again, 2 years of data is not something that we feel is a trend, and our target is 15. So that is something that we've worked on this year to set that target, because originally it was 95, but that was before we adopted this particular measure, the way that it works. So 15 seems to be a standard in service, government, industries of excellence. So that's something that we're shooting for. And last but not least is the staff diversity measure. And so in 2016-17, we had 6.7% of our staff identify as individuals of color, and that increased slightly to 7.5% in 2018-19. So our goal is to have 10% by 2022, and our projection, if this level of increase were to continue year over year, would be that we would have 9% staff who identify as persons of color by 2022. So that is, that's it. We have no appendices. So that's it. That's my report on the Portland Promise metrics. Again, this is something that we hope to be able to do every year going forward, and actually have things like our opportunity gap data included in here, as well as five-year graduation rates and so on. So any questions or comments?
It's a question, but it's more of a brief explanation. You mentioned data that you're going to share with us in the next meeting from the bar. Can you give us an idea of how that's going to help us interpret the progress that we're making towards the Portland Promise?
Well, so that's specifically an analysis that we've been engaged in over the last year to look at how do our students do once they leave and go to post-secondary education. And so it really informs and then sort of it looks at those students and their outcomes in college and then traces their history through our schools. So it helps us to understand the types of challenges that then set kids off on a track to not be successful when they to not be successful in high school, and to not be successful even if they're successful in high school and graduate, and then go off to post-secondary education to be successful in post-secondary education. So it really helps to inform all the way back to the middle school. What are the types of indicators that we have early on of students that are going to not be successful in high school or not be successful once they graduate from high school and post-secondary ed.
Good. And assuming the opposite is also true, that it identifies what works, what does help them to be
For
successful.
example, I talked about the importance of access to advanced placement classes. Right. Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Before we move, I actually did want to say something about our Portland Promise and this update. First of all, that it is really important that we regularly get these updates and we understand the work that goes into moving these goals forward. But I guess what I wanted to share was when we look at public education, even outside of Portland, we see challenges that are replicated throughout our country. It is a system that's really challenging to navigate, and some might even say it's incredibly rigged and purposely meant to have certain people not succeed in it. So what we're doing here is trying to move a really, really challenging intervention forward in a group of goals that we have. So the challenge is massive. I mean, it's enormous. It's what probably got a lot of us to run for the school board and be part of this work. We understand that the system is not really set up to have everyone succeed, but these things that we're putting in place, we're purposely doing to beat this system. So I think it's important to be patient, it's important to pay attention to the details, and it's important to understand why we're doing this, so that we can support the people that are in the classroom, we can support our students, our families, and certainly our staff that are working so diligently to make these things happen. So again, thank you for the update. So much information that really we all need to be aware of. So I'm looking forward to continuing this. Thank you. Having said that, we'll move to new business, consideration and action to adopt a resolution supporting implementation of a solar energy program. Is there a motion? Ms. Victor, second. Mr. Atkinson, are there any questions on the motion? Or actually, would the superintendent please speak on the motion? Thank you. Am I going fast today? Sorry.
In June, the Portland Board of Education's Operation Committee met with Solarize Portland student leaders and members of the Portland Climate Action Team of the Sierra Club, the PCAT, and directed staff to obtain a deeper understanding of the potential for major solar energy projects in the Portland Public Schools, including multiple rooftop projects. As you know, staff engaged CES, Competitive Energy Services, a city-approved vendor specializing in advising on renewable energy projects, to conduct an in-depth evaluation of different structures and ownership arrangements and make recommendation to the superintendent on the viability of such projects and the costs and opportunities that they present. CS delivered a draft report, which was part of your packet at the last meeting, along with an RFP for a potential small demonstration project at King Middle School. At the last board meeting, you participated in a workshop to review the CES recommendations, and as a result of that workshop, staff, advocates, and board members collaborated on a resolution that would capture the intent of the recommendation. The purpose of the resolution before you is to formally commit the board to pursuing an off-site solar project consistent with the recommendation that we discussed 2 weeks ago. The resolution outlines the value proposition of the solar project and charges me and our team team with working to bring this project about in the most efficient and timely manner possible. I want to point out that at the last meeting, as I mentioned, we had our first read on a possible RFP for a smaller demonstration project on the King Middle School roof. Subsequent to that first read, staff reassessed the potential of that project, and specifically, as staff, we uncovered concerns about the impact of putting a significant array on our roof and the implications for future care of the roof as a structure. So I'm committed to achieving the educational value of that project in other ways, such as leveraging the existing small arrays at East End Community School, at Ocean Avenue Elementary School, and at Lincoln Middle School, or adding a mobile solar cart as part of the larger project when the specifications for the larger project are developed. And that's why we pulled that item from tonight's agenda. So we are asking you to act tonight on the resolution that is in your packet, which would commit us to pursuing a 3,500 kilowatt array off-site, so not on Portland Public Schools grounds, that would, as we heard at the last meeting, cover roughly between 60 and 80% of our energy needs, and would have the potential to save, somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 a year if we decided to keep the credits and use that so that we could legitimately say that we are offsetting our carbon footprint and therefore helping the environment. So I'm super excited about this. I want to thank Board Member Figdor for her energetic edits to the original resolution, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Excellent. If you mind coming up to the podium, give us your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. When you get up to the 3 minutes, I'll probably interrupt you, and if you need an extra minute, we'll grant it to you. That shouldn't be a problem. You have the floor.
Hi, I'm Lucia Durrani. I'm a senior at Casco Bay High School, and I'm here to talk about the youth support of the resolution on the table tonight. This idea started as a small thought of a few green teams about putting solar panels on just a few schools, specifically King and Casco Bay, and over the past year and a half has turned into, well, what it is today, which is the possibility of offsetting 80% of our energy and carbon footprint through an off-the-roofs project, which would be a terrific step in what we were thinking about during this project. Not only would this be an educational opportunity for us to show the city and the state what Portland believes is important in the future of our education system and also in the future of the children, but it would also be an incredible vision to the country to show what public schools can be doing for energy and can be doing for the future in the climate crisis that is unfortunately at hand. So I just wanted to say that the youth are in support of this resolution and are very excited for the future of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Gus Goodwin. I live in Portland on Wellwood Road. And I am fully supportive of this recommendation before us. I think as leaders, you have an opportunity here. I think so often with climate decisions these days, people just look at the numbers and look at the cost. And it's so easy to just kick the can down the road. And the reality is we're running out of time. And the longer we keep kicking that can down the road, that means our kids are really going to have to make those decisions. So I was thinking about this and thinking about how often in life you're in a spot, in a position to make a change. And you are all in that spot, in my eyes, that tonight you can make a very bold statement that you want to do something. You care about the kids, you care about our future, and you'll be a role model for the city and for the state and really for our country, that you're making a statement that you believe in what these kids have come forward with, you've listened to their ideas, you've also looked at the data, the information, and you're making this bold decision, and I fully support you in that, and I'm proud of the city and proud of you for hopefully making that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus.
Hello, I'm Yusur Jassim. I'm a junior at Casco Bay High School. And like many others, I also here to represent the youth voice in this proposal, and I'm very supportive for it because this might seem as a small change, but eventually it will create bigger changes. Small actions will eventually lead to bigger projects, like Mr. Goodwin stated. This is going to create a change in our city, eventually in the country, maybe in the world. And if we keep waiting for someone else to change, that change will never come. So we need to start taking action. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sarah LaChance. I'm at 143 Pine Street. I want to just start by thanking all the amazing youth seated behind me. It's been an incredible honor to be involved in this project, and I know all of you have also found it incredibly inspiring to watch them pave this incredible path forward on how we can actually transition to a clean energy future. So I have like two hats that I wear. I have been working with Campaign Earth, as a nonprofit I started, where I've been helping them with the fundraising effort that has taken place with this. But I also have another hat where I own my own business called Green Volt, where I actually am that sort of third-party investor that you heard about in terms of how we can get this project done. And when I sat here last time and I heard some questions popping up about how does this really work from the PPA standpoint, I was just wanted to maybe help put a little clarity there, because I know folks were worried about upfront costs and how this was all going to look. So just give you an example of one of my business transactions was with like Town of Woolwich. So they wanted to put solar panels on their rooftops, but they couldn't get the job done, just like you all can't, because you can't take advantage of that 30% tax credit. So said investor like myself comes in, and just for talking purposes, let's say a project's going to cost $1 million. Immediately you can take $300,000 off that project because I'm going to absorb that as the third-party investor who's going to own that. And there's also the accelerated depreciation component of the actual panels that I can take advantage of as well as the owner of these panels. So that's going to take another 10% off. So you take that $1 million investment, and now you're down to $600,000. And then over the lifetime of the contract, I'm taking in the dollar amount of the energy that's being produced so that I'm making my own money as the investor while you're paying me instead of CMP to make the power. So as you're looking at contracts that come in, there's going to be all kinds of different investors. Like for myself, I don't have $1 million. I've done smaller projects. Okay, so as this comes in, you're going to have some folks that are willing to say, hey, I've got $2 million tax appetite and I can do this, and I care so much about the environment that I don't care what my ROI looks like. So you may get some investors that have a more attractive package, and the solar companies that go out and bid for this have those people in their back pocket. So they're all the time out there talking to these investors saying, okay, when I'm ready for a project of this scale, do you want to jump in? And that's why we've got also got that sense of urgency for you all to move forward as quickly as possible. You don't just have that federal tax credit disappearing eventually, getting smaller starting next year. You've also got all these investors out there that want to do the right thing, but there's going to suddenly, because Maine is suddenly more attractive for these type of investments, there's going to be other folks coming to them and saying, hey, there's a project up in Wiscasset, and there's a project in Bangor now. And so there's only so many of these investors that are willing to step forward with these type of projects and get a smaller return on the investment. They're not putting their money in the stock market because they care about these amazing students behind us, and they're willing to say, if I only get 4% on my money, but I know I got behind this amazing youth-led initiative, I'm fine with that. So I just wanted to share that because I just know there was some question about, there's no upfront cost to you folks at all. And then at the end of the day, you'll look at the contract and make some decisions around what's the best thing that comes through the door. And that's going to be varied depending on how quickly you get out the gate.
Thank you.
Good evening, members. I'm Robert Stoddard at 28 Monument Square. I am the principal of Power Market Economics, which works on exactly this kind of issue. I helped Senator Dow draft LD 1711, which was the bill that enabled this whole project to go forward. And this is exactly what the senator had in mind and what the legislative committees had in mind to see going forward, to enable, through state law, great, sensible actions that make sense financially and make sense for the state's broader policies of promoting renewable energy. I was there when the governor signed this bill into law, as well as the parallel move to a very aggressive renewable portfolio standard. And it's great that at this time you're stepping forward and being very proactive about this and setting a great example. I've worked closely with CES over the past few weeks to look at their report and understand what's in it. They really completely understand what's going on with the state law. That report is a beautifully crafted piece. I think the analysis behind it is solid. And the conclusion is very straightforward. The schools can save pretty serious money at the same time as doing the right thing from environmental, social policy, and leadership goals. So I urge you all to vote for this resolution. It's a win-win for everyone involved and really honors the huge amount of work that the Solarize team has done over the past year. I'm with the Portland Climate Action team as well and have been working with them and alongside them, encouraging and supporting where I can. So thank you for your vote tonight.
My name is Siri Pierce. I'm a rising senior at Casco Bay High School. And I would first like to reiterate our gratitude for the board's consideration of this resolution. I think, as you can see, there are lots of youth here tonight, and we really feel like we have been listened to. And I think we can all say we're very supportive of this resolution. We would also like to urge you to act on this resolution tonight because there are so many financial reasons to act sooner rather than later. We think the sooner we take action, the better. So I think it's important that we act on this resolution tonight. I also wanted to mention that we, Solarize Portland, are willing to continue to work with the board on future solar projects. I know we'd put aside the King demonstration project, and we believe this resolution is a great and excellent first step for our school district, but we do believe that it's important that we have some sort of solar array project on school roofs, and as the superintendent mentioned, in the future we'd like to look at any possibility, whether it's on King or newer school roofs, whatever is most suitable for our district. And finally, I'd just like to say that I think what's clear is we're not asking you to make any financial sacrifices. If anything, this resolution is going to be a money saver for the district. So it's not just making a sacrifice for our environment. It's taking advantage of the natural resources we have and using them to our advantage, and we think that this resolution is the perfect opportunity to do that and to support all of the amazing youth who have come out in support of this project. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Good evening, everyone. Ellen Mahoney, 726 Seashore Ave, Peaks Island. And all I have to say is, wow. You know, as past Portland Public School employee, I was part of the advisory group that looked at putting solar panels on the Peaks Island roof in order to charge batteries for an emergency shelter situation, like one that was piloted in York Hospital. I think that was almost 10 years ago. So I've watched Gus Goodwin teach kids in middle school about sustainability for 10, 15 years. And to watch the kids through expeditionary learning model exactly what we're striving toward with Portland's Promise in relevancy and preparedness and engagement, to come up with really wild and fantastic ideas, and then hone those ideas over time with a collaborative process and a very public process and an engaging process to bring stakeholders to the table and engage business and philanthropic and students and community members to come up with an idea and a project that is doable. Not only is it doable, it makes sense, and it makes sense for our city, it makes sense for, to reach the city's goals of carbon neutral by 2040. And I guess I just wanted to just say thank you all, because I've watched them. You know, I'm Lucia's mom, and I've seen Lucia learn about sustainability, not from us necessarily, maybe a little bit, but she learned about it at school. She learned about it at Peaks Island Elementary School, she learned about it at King Middle School, and now she's implementing this project as a rising senior at Casco Bay. You're doing it. The work is happening. Congratulations. So my hope is that tonight you will vote in favor of the resolution and move this project forward. Lucia, I hope I'm not telling anything out of school, but we have had the conversations where she says, you know, Mom, I kind of get the feeling like they just want us to graduate and be gone. And then, you know, they won't have to deal with us. I don't want Lucia to be graduating and gone. I want their hard work and the staff's hard work and the community's hard work and investment to move forward, as promised in Portland Schools' public promise and in the City of Portland's carbon neutral promise. So thank you all for your time and attention, and good work, everybody.
Mr. Chair, forgive my attire. It was a casual day in Portland. Forgive me. School board members, my name's Ethan Strimling. I'm the mayor of the city of Portland. I'm here on behalf of the people of the city to encourage you to support this tonight. I just wanted to read real quickly something that I wrote. In October, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made it clear that global climate change is an unparalleled threat to human survival. This is not a faraway problem. A 1.5 degree rise in global temperature will put Commercial Street, Baxter Boulevard, and East Bayside underwater within decades. Imagine Becky's Diner, Hannaford, the Maine State Pier, and the Bayside Trail all gone, all underwater. We can't let that happen. The only responsible course, of course, is to begin now to end our dependence on fossil fuels and at the same time develop our city's capacity in the green economy, including local food production, community relationships, mutual aid networks, and energy regeneration. But before I talk about the solar project in Portland, let me tell you about a community center in your chair's home country, home state, kind of country we'll call it, should have rights, called Casa Puebla. Decades before Hurricane Maria hit, Casa Puebla had installed solar panels on the roof. After the storm, when the rest of the island was without power, Casa Puebla became a literal beacon of light. Residents walked miles to reach the center for food, clean water, medicine, news from the only functioning radio, and power for life-saving oxygen tanks. Casa Puebla understood the perils of dependence on fossil fuels because they valued community resilience and self-sufficiency and installed solar. They were able to save lives and offer hope in their darkest hour. And we must be able to do the same. And that, to me, is what's most important about tonight. Powering our schools with the sun, both symbolically and literally, reduces our carbon footprint, but protects us when, God forbid, something happens. My hope is that if there is a climate event in the city of Portland, our children will still get education. And tonight, the act that you're about to take could help make sure that that happens. Because we have to keep moving forward. Even in these times when we know the climate is changing, we know we have already lost time. But if we don't start confronting it now, nothing else matters. And so for tonight, I hope that you will vote for this resolve, both to reduce our carbon footprint, to help save the planet, but also to make sure that when something occurs, our kids still get the education they need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If we have any other public comment, please step in. If not, we'll close the public comment portion, and if we have any other board discussion. Mr. Atkinson and then Ms. Trevor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the public for comment. I haven't really been too involved in this process or this discussion yet, but I think many of my board colleagues know that this is an area that I have great passion for. This is actually my day job, is working to bring solar energy and make that work on a much smaller scale. This is a huge project. I mean, 3.5 megawatts is an incredibly large and ambitious project. So this feels really good. So I think I've actually sort of been casting around. People kept talking about how this is a win-win, and I feel like there's like a couple of little like angels sitting on one shoulder, like from the old cartoons, and I keep searching around and wondering where is the little devil? What's the catch? Yeah, is this too good to be true? So I was sort of looking around for that. I think the only thing that I could really come up with is that there are some regulatory things like net metering and the renewable energy credits that I think we need to be very diligent when we get to the contract phase of this, that we're checking to make sure that we're covered and that we're not opening ourselves up to any sorts of liabilities. But I'm very excited to be supporting this today. I think it's amazing that this came from a student initiative. So thank you to all of the students and all of the community members who put their effort into bringing this before us, because this would not be in front of us, and this really, really major project would not be where it is right now without your effort. So thank you so much for bringing this to us. We're going to save money by doing the right thing. What's better than that? Thank you.
So I don't have anything grand to add, because everybody has spoken very well tonight. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Atkinson, and all the public comment this evening, but I did want to just speak up to register my support for this resolution and to say thank you to the Solarize group and to the coalition that worked on this, to the youth in particular. I think what you brought us tonight is a gift for us to be able to vote on this. It's not often that we get to work on something that is, as we've said, a win-win. So it's a great gift that you brought us. Congratulations, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. First, there are some very small grammatical changes that I might suggest. I'm sorry. I'll just run through them really fast. That there's a mistake that competitive energy services is described in the document as competitive energy systems. And then also, very small, but I think we just need to clean up the semicolons, add an and at the end of the whereas clauses, add an and after the first therefore clause. So that's it, very small, but just cleaning up the document a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah. So these are all pretty friendly amendments, come on grammatical errors, so we'll take them as that. Were you able to note all of them?
I know that we need to do ands, therefores,
columns, semicolons,
and competitive energy systems.
Perfect.
Sorry, it says systems, it'll change to services.
Thank you. May I speak to the resolution?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm pretty floored by the opportunity to take on a project so big, and there's no chance that we would be doing this without the hard work of Solarize Portland. We're at this amazing moment on solar power in Maine, where, as a result of many years of work, we've just passed major legislation that had been blocked by Governor LePage and others. And solar is about to take off as an energy source in Maine, and the school system is gonna be a part of benefiting from that. And there's no way we would be in this place without your work. This, I can clearly say, was nowhere on the school's agenda. It'd be great if we were able to think about very bold and forward-looking ideas like this, but the reality is that it's very complex and busy to run a school system, and this just wasn't on the agenda, and we would not be here without your work. So I'm so proud of what you all have accomplished and feel so honored to be able to move forward on a decision like this and take up a project that is really significant in scale to get the vast majority of our electricity as a school district from solar power is awesome. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the superintendent for seeing this process through, and I really look forward to seeing this project get off the ground. I do also want to state that I also, as Ms. Pierce talked about, I'm also still interested in a project on the roof of King. I do think that the roof at King can sustain the solar arrays, but and I think there's a lot of benefits of doing that project, but I realize it's the challenges as well, and I'm so enthusiastic about doing this large off-site project. So thank you to our students. You've accomplished, you've shown us how it's possible as young people to change our community and fight climate change, the issue that for your generation is probably unparalleled in terms of the challenges that we face. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Norris?
I just want to let you guys know that I'm in full support of this proposal, and obviously big shout out to the students, the crowd. That's a lot of advocacy, a lot of student voice that you guys are showing, and I think that's really great, and I love to see that. Also, great job sitting through, especially you guys, who looked like you kind of just showed up here for the first time. It's super hard to sit through a school board meeting, I would know as a teenager, but you guys are doing a great job, and thank you for being here in support of this resolution. I just want to clarify a couple things in one of the therefores. So just want to make sure the board realizes that we are going to retain and retire the renewable energy credits, which were separate from the tax credits that Ms. LaChance was talking about earlier. And I just want to make sure, this is more of a question, that our numbers that we got from CES model us retaining those credits.
Yeah, I think and I don't have the proposal in front of me, but the way that it works is if we keep the credits, we're likely to pay a higher price per kilowatt. And so that, if you look at those tables and you see something that says like a 10 cents, so instead of a 10-cent one, if we let the PPA keep the RECs, it might be 8 cents. So we would be paying less for the energy, but they would get to retire those and take credit for it. We wouldn't be able to do that. So that's the way that model works is, it's all, in all likelihood, going to be more expensive to keep the RECs. Not in all likelihood, it will be more expensive to keep the RECs than if we let the PPA keep it. And that's, I think, the way that that's the way that the math works. I don't know if Mr. Stoddard, I see you nodding, which I feel good about, and I also have my team in the back, so.
If I may, yeah, and that's consistent with what Mr. Agnew presented, that he projected, as I recall, between a 1.5 and 2 cent per kilowatt hour to keep the rec.
Yeah.
But that, given the range of power prices that we've seen in the market, I think that, we're still well on the table that CES produced that shows that this is a net economic benefit.
Yeah, and by retiring, we are cashing in on the credit, like the saying we are conserving this energy.
Mr. Stoddard is again nodding.
Thank you.
Ms. Figos.
I can speak to that. So by retiring the credit, then we essentially take that out of the system, and so we're reducing the overall carbon footprint. So that's how, as a school district, we reduce our carbon footprint and offset the need for fossil fuels. So that's why it's in here and why it's so critical, because we don't want to just get our electricity from the sun. We also want to reduce our carbon footprint as a district overall.
Any other board discussion? Seeing none, I would just say real quickly, Lucy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to just comment. Pardon?
Never mind.
I'm sorry. I wanted to comment on we just want to move you through and get you out of schools. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I did want to seriously, pardon me? I just wanted to seriously say that, genuinely, that's not what we want. And I know that you didn't mean that, as a person. But we value our students. We value, especially when we have an opportunity to support students in the work that they're doing. And so again, I didn't mean to say that comment was taken any other way other than an opportunity for me to acknowledge that all of our students are incredibly valuable, and what we really want to do is prepare you for anything that you consider to be important in your life, that you can take advantage of it. And so I hope that what we're about to do right now, and I'm about to really enthusiastically support this resolution, I hope that comes through as exactly what I just said, that we value our students, that we specifically, this resolution, acknowledge that it started from a group of students, and that here we are today about to make a really significant stance as the largest school district in the state of Maine. So again, we'll put this to the vote, sorry. All those in favor of adopting the resolution supporting implementation of a solar energy program, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Thank you. Next, we're on personnel items. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed. Probationary teachers, is there a motion? Ms. Trevorrow, second by Ms. Davis. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
So I don't have the personnel in my packet, but I'm seeing Barb. Okay, perfect. So we have 4 probationary teachers who are up for a vote from the board. These are all positions that are currently in the budget, and these are just part of completing our staffing for the school year.
Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, there are no public comment on personnel items. Any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, probationary teachers, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Thank you. Next, seeing that it's before the hour of 10 p.m., is there any public comment on items not on this evening's agenda? Please come to the podium Excellent. Carrie, you have 3 minutes to address the board. This
I won't take all that time,
timer.
but thank you. I'm Carrie Foster, 101 Danforth Street. I wanted to just introduce myself formally in my new role as the incoming PEA president. I've met many of you already. I've started work with many more, and I want to thank you for always keeping staff and students first, which I'm really very much appreciating in this role. I also wanted to publicly acknowledge the teachers. You already mentioned people who did intake and staffing and worked at the summer programming, which was wonderful. We also had a group of PEA members volunteering for a welcome desk and for meals at the expo all summer, which I thought was great. It was really our community coming together for the best of all of us. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Again, introduce myself, and thank you all for your work.
I'm going to give ample time so no one complains this time.
There's nobody, unless the mayor's going to complain.
Yes.
Somebody else just snap.
If there's no one else to address the board, we'll close the public comment section. And do we have a motion to adjourn tonight's business meeting? Ms. Victor, second by Ms. Davis. All those in favor, please indicate. It's unanimous. Students voting in favor. We've adjourned at 8:39 p.m.